I've been adding a lot of buildings and small details to my Dwarven Cave City, but one of the best ways to beautify a city is through terraforming. In this episode, I want to terraform and build a subterranean waterfall coming out of this hole of our cave to explain where the dwarves get their fresh water. I also want to do some small terraforming projects like adding a hot spring and a tree. Leave a like if you enjoy world building and subscribe if you're new. I haven't designed the build yet, but I already know that it's going to require a lot of resources and a lot of inventory management. Because like I was saying in the last episode, building these builds look super nice, right? But with the block palettes, with all these different blocks, the inventory management becomes super atrocious. So I think something that we must do is we need to go to the end and find some shulker boxes. So I forgot to click record on flashback and record audio. So we did some end rating and we got some shulker boxes. I think I got like 25 shulker boxes worth of, or 25 shulker boxes. And you know, it's just end rating. So I was going to originally do like a little cinematic for the end rating, but I forgot to click record. I feel like when you think of terraforming projects, you mostly think of like overworld stuff. And since I am living in a cave, you know, maybe terraforming isn't the biggest priority since I am using a lot of the natural generation, but I do want to really add a waterfall coming down here and then splashing down into the deep dark that goes all the way down there. So from a world building perspective, this adds a water source to the whole city. When you're a major city like this, you need a lot of water for, you know, irrigation of crops and, you know, just, you know, drinking water and day-to-day use of water. I'm sure something like an iron factory would use a ton of water. So we talked about underground aquifers being probably a primary source of water for the dwarves. So we've got this little water pump that's pumping water out from the ground and then using it for the iron factory. So the vision of this build is a subterranean waterfall. There's actually a underground waterfall in America called Ruby Falls, and that's in Tennessee. I think it's the largest waterfall, underground waterfall in America. But what I want to do is I want to add some backing to this whole pillar right here. So I want to add some more cave to the surrounding spot. Hopefully it doesn't really hit this building here. This building is kind of blocking the way, actually, now that I think about it. But we want to add some backing, a waterfall coming down, flowing all the way down there. And then we also want to add our first greenery to this whole cave. I want to add a tree kind of hanging off the cliff side here. So we'll probably add like a little hanging cliff here. And then the tree will be hanging out here, kind of reaching towards the sky there where there's the little bit of light. And that'll be the only singular tree in this whole city. And then we've got this magic floating gravel block that I have not broken. Maybe there's some lore behind it. I don't know. Before this cave, we're going to need a lot of glass. And then we're going to also use like basalt, maybe some deep slate. I am using tuff. I am using diorite. We're going to use some basic stone types like cobblestone and andesite. All right, so here's a quick rundown on how to do a waterfall. So, I've been watching B-dubs, so this is heavily inspired by B-dubs, by the way. But what you got to do is you have like a white backing, so you can either use like diorite or calcite, and then you'll kind of have this surrounding area filled with, or let's turn on full bright. So you've got surrounding the water itself, you're going to have some darker blocks like tuff or basalt. That's supposed to be representing like wet stone. Okay, so the waterfall itself will be these kind of white panes and whatnot. And then outside of the general splash zone of the water, then you will have these stone types. So you'll have like andesite and stone, cobblestone, all that like. And that is going to be just the general like gist of how you do the waterfall. I'll also be adding like little bits of moss covering certain flat like plateaus on the actual waterfall. But this is generally how you're going to be making the waterfall. But now that you've got a little rundown, it's time to build this waterfall. I believe the lingo is I cooked, cause dang, look at this. This is looking absolutely sick. I think I might tear this down because it is blocking a bit of the view. Even if I just remove like the little ceiling here or the little roof right there and just left this dark oak thing right here, I think it would still work. And then it would kind of bring in a little more of the view. So it's like kind of cutting out this part, which is part of the like separation, which looks absolutely gorgeous. So I don't want to obstruct that view. So, but you know, let me know in the comments what you think if I should remove that. But I'm not gonna lie, this turned out way better than I imagined. Because I am not the best terraformer. This is like my first legitimate terraforming project I've ever done. Most of the times my builds are just builds, and then like I haven't really been doing terraforming at all. If you notice, like all of my builds so far, nothing has had terraforming. Even when I started in the ferry section, I just kind of built the build and then put the build on like flat land. But this, oh my goodness, look at that. But if you want to attempt this yourself, I do recommend watching BOO's videos. I think he talks about it in the glass waterfall video for his building with B-dubs, and then he also talks about it in Grian's world tour for Hermitcraft. I missed a spot here, but we're going to come back and fill in that gap. But the reason why water looks white in a waterfall is because when it's kind of traveling at such high turbulence and it's so quick, it creates little air bubbles, and those little air bubbles reflect off of light, and then it kind of turns this like white color. And so for the dwarves, from a world building perspective, this ice melt up top right here, it'll kind of be very cold up here, a lot of ice, and then also snow would come down. And then a lot of it, when it gets a little warmer, it will melt a little bit. And then that's where we have the explanation for where the water is coming from. I just put it right there. So what I could do is I could extend it even higher. But I think from like this angle, it kind of looks like it's just coming from like a little pocket right here. So I'm going to leave it at that. But the stone that's closer to the actual water itself will be kind of having this darker tone. So I use white glass because it's kind of high turbulence and it's very steep. So the water should be going very quickly down. But if you are doing a very, maybe not as steep of a waterfall, and maybe it's a slower waterfall, then you can add in a little more gray stained glass, as well as maybe some light blue glass. That way it'll kind of show that the water is not moving so quickly, and that the water is able to settle a little bit, which shows that little light blue color of the water. So for the actual waterfall, you'll notice that there's a lot of diorite in the background, and then I even added some little high colors of white wool there, and that kind of helps accentuate the actual waterfall itself. If you were doing maybe a slower one that's a little more colored and light blue, you could probably add like some prismarine in the background, and that would help with the coloring as well. And then slightly slanting out, we've got the darker stone. So we've got tuff and we've got basalt and polished basalt in order to show that little wet rock. This one, I didn't do it all the way through. So as you can tell for this part right here, it's not like, I should turn this all into like basalt or tuff to make it super wet looking. But I kind of liked the way that this looked. But if you really want the waterfall to pop, you could definitely add like this basalt and tuff surrounding the entire area downwards. That's kind of like directly touching the water, and then it's like maybe 1 or 2 blocks away from the water. And then you can transition the dry stone into like andesite stone, cobblestone, and the mossy cobblestone. So every time we hit a hard surface, we're gonna have like this water spray. So when we come down here, it hits this little segment right here. So we've got a bit of a water spray right here. You can use a lot of glass panes, or you can also use a bit of candles, which I did use very, very sparingly. For the white candles, you can use it as the tiny, like super far away, tiny droplets that are shooting out. So I use it very sparingly. I think I only use like a total of like 8 or 10 white candles. And to add a bit more interest to the waterfall, you can also add these little segments of rock that's kind of protruding out. That way it can divide the water streams. So the water kind of hits the rock, kind of goes its own separate streams, and then it finally comes back together near the bottom here. I'm not sure I'm going to extend the waterfall all the way down. I probably could, but you know, the chance of me looking all the way down there, I mean, I guess I will. So eventually in the future, I'll drop the waterfall all the way down there to the deep dark. Ooh, and you'll be able to see it now because it's getting a little dark, but I did add a little bit of glow lichen behind certain parts of the glass or right next to the glass. So it adds this like enchanted feel. So during the nighttime, it glows a little bit. So let's wait for it to be a little more dark and then we can take a peek at how that works. All right, so there you go. It's completely dark now, but there is still a little bit of light shining through. So we did add like some glow lichen very sparingly in certain spots. I mostly did it next to either mossy cobblestone or the tuff in order to kind of like blend it in a little bit. But as you can tell, we added a few drops of light everywhere. Some of them are behind the glass. I'm not sure where exactly. I think back here I'd place some, or no, I don't know. I placed a few in the background behind the actual waterfall, and that helps illuminate it a tiny bit, give off a little bit of light, and also helps prevent mobs from spawning because it gets very dark up here. So I need to add like a few more glow lichens up here as well. But can you just imagine being a dwarf or maybe just a wandering traveler and you come across this and it's super like man-made, dwarf-made, you know, super grand. But then once you enter the city, you know, as you're going through the main street, your eyes immediately kind of brought towards this right here, this natural beauty right there. It's like a natural wonder of the world that we've got in our little cave. Terraforming can really make or break your builds, and this is kind of a perfect example. It kind of, you know, it doesn't do anything, but does it add so much immersion to this area? It really does. So in real life, subterranean waterfalls don't actually have this backing. Normally it's just in a kind of a free fall, but I really wanted to make it stand out. And, you know, I think just having the terrain like this behind the waterfall just makes it look so much better. But if you come up here, there's like absolutely nothing back here. I need to definitely light it up. I'm going to extend the terraforming back here just a little bit because I do want to add something back here. It's going to be kind of like a behind the waterfall type build, you know, maybe like a grotto back there. I don't know, maybe something naturey. So one last thing I want to do for this build here is I want to add a tree. And so for this tree to stand out, I can't use any of these gray blocks and then nothing green. So I'm thinking the cherry tree might be a good idea. So we'll kind of curve there and then it'll have a color pop from the pink leaves. I mean, hopefully the tree doesn't obstruct too much of the waterfall. I'm okay with it obstructing a little bit on this side, but this side, man, this side is picturesque, honestly. But this side, it wouldn't be blocking it. I don't know. We'll build a tree and then we'll see if we like it. So let's get building this tree now. And that's our very first tree done. It's looking super sick. I'm not gonna lie. This is like such a picturesque landscape. Oh man. Now the only thing with this tree is that when you walk in now, it does slightly obscure the waterfall, but I don't know. I kind of like it. Like hopping into free cam. Okay, this guy is not supposed to be up there, but so take him away. But look at this landscape right here. It's like super picturesque. So I saw a photo on, I looked up a photo for a tree with a waterfall background, and there was one that was kind of having this tree just like slightly obscure the waterfall, and it looked super cool. So a cool thing about the cherry leaves as well is that it has these like little particles flying off of it. You can't really see it right now, and I know they're adding particles to like all the other tree leaves in the next update, but for the meantime, it's looking pretty cool. And then honestly, like the bats flying around occasionally just makes it so immersive and like ambient, because you know, it's like it's an actual cave, so bats, it wouldn't be a surprise that bats are living here as well. Now a big issue is the goats keep keep coming down from the top. They keep spawning around this area. Kind of ruining my waterfall view. Oh, look, there you go. It's adding a little bit of motion to the waterfall, if you want to look at it that way. But I wanted to make a pretty magical looking tree. So we went with the cherry tree because it does have that nice pop of color. And it also makes sense because there is actually a cherry biome right there. So maybe the cherry tree just kind of fell there. But we added a little magic to it by adding these end rods that we got while we were end raiding. And it does add a very nice touch. It's like a little weeping vines, but they glow. Makes the place just look super, super magical. But here's like the angle of the trunk. It's kind of leaning towards the sunlight here because it's blocked right here. So it has to lean outwards in order to get some sunlight. And I think it really, really sells that idea. And, oh man, look at that. This is a thumbnail right there. So this is actually the very first custom tree that I have on this world building series. I do want to build more trees in the future, maybe just not in this area. Having just a single tree makes it feel super special, so I might just keep it like that. If anything, for greenery in this cave, we might add some like mushrooms kind of throughout the area. I think that might be kind of a good compromise without, having to build more trees in this area. But with it being the only tree in this Dwarven cave, I do think it would make sense for them to kind of have like a shrine for this area, because the tree in that case would be very sacred. So the tree's like right here. So I think we could probably make like a tiny little shrine right here where the dwarves would kind of come here and give homage to the tree. For the dwarves, I imagine it would be kind of symbolic and like almost spiritual for them, because it kind of gives a message that you can kind of thrive even in the worst conditions. So in that case, they would probably worship this tree. All right, so the last thing we want to do in this episode is we want to build a hot spring, which I'm actually in a creative copy of my world because I recorded the last few clips without audio on accident. I accidentally turned off my mic. So we're just gonna, kind of show you what it looks like. I already built it. So here is the exterior of the hot spring, and it's honestly super simple wall. It's kind of ugly, low key. So if you have any recommendations on how to kind of spruce up this wall, it really is just here to kind of divide the hot spring out from the actual street. But when we come inside, we've got a hot spring. So the hot spring is connected to our little tavern right here. So we'll have like a locker room coming in here, and then you'll be able to come out here. But then the hot spring is also open to the public. This is kind of just a general area where you can kind of bathe and get clean for the dwarves. So there is no divide for this hot spring. So I guess it's very gender neutral. Maybe at certain hours, like it's like women hour, and then other hours it's like men hours, and then other hours it's, free for all. But in general, hot springs are made out of a stone called travertine. It's this type of limestone, and then other common stone types I think are calcite. So I ended up choosing this dripstone and granite mix just because it kind of looks like real life limestone. And honestly, it just kind of matches this entire area with the dripstone. So I wanted to keep this project super, super simple. And so we just did 4 different pools. One of them is elevated just to add a little bit of interest. And then to add this little smoke effect, you literally just dig 2 blocks deep. This one is dug 1 block deep, and then you just put a trapdoor on top. That way the smoke will go higher. This one's down 2 blocks. So since it's 2 blocks, the height of the steam is actually slightly lower. I think the peak is right here, and then this peak is like right up here. But the hot spring is actually connected to our iron farm. So we've got this iron farm right here, and then we've got the iron farm here. So it looks like we have a guest in the hot spring. He's having a much worse time than I am in this area, but very unfortunate for him. But overall, it's a very simple terraforming project. If you want to do this yourself, I'd honestly probably recommend just using regular stone. That way you can texturize it with like some andesite and cobblestone. That way it looks a little nicer and a little more ambient. I don't know. I think the dripstone and granite looks perfectly fine though as well. And so I also changed up the episode structure a little bit. So I want to do like the previous episode stuff near the end, just to kind of help with some YouTube stuff. There's a thing called retention. So I think like building the build that I'm talking about in the episode pretty early on in the episode helps with retention a little bit. So we're just gonna test that out a little bit. But in the last episode, we worked on these 6 different shop fronts, and we did do a few interiors on them. But I asked you guys for some recommendations on the interiors, and we got a comment from JLimmer2000 that wanted this building to be this jeweler, but I ended up adding the jeweler up here. So for the jeweler, we've got this little space right here where we've got some guy selling some amethyst shards, blue crystals, so, you know, take that for what you will. Then we also added like some small things like random button here and a button there, just to kind of, you know, represent, I don't know, some type of gemstone maybe. And then we've got a turtle egg. And then obviously, since this guy is making probably pretty big money, he's got a painting and he's got a little seating area. And so I also didn't do all the interiors. So like this one is very unfinished. It's got like, this one's supposed to be the polisher. So he's got some iron armor here to polish. And then coming up here, he's got a little workstation where he's polishing the armor with this grindstone, which is not really how you polish things, but we'll just leave it like that for now. And then we also got a comment from Melon Lord Rinray that was talking about adding like a honeycomb farm in the polisher area. And I think I might add like a honeycomb farm up here. Potentially I'll add like small little farms in the living space, maybe some micro farms just to get a little bit of material. I actually do have a honeycomb farm in my ferry area, which I think what we're going to do in the next episode is connect this build with that area so I can actually go back there and, you know, kind of gather resources from my other farms that I previously made. But for this building, we made a little meat shop. So this right here will have some shelves of like raw beef and raw pork. And then he's got some cooked meat hanging up here and then like a bone-in piece of cut of meat. But I imagine for dwarves, they're probably pretty hungry for meat. Dwarves can be some heavy drinkers, so I imagine they would enjoy like nice cuts of meat with their ale and I don't know, maybe their glowberry wine and their vodka, because I imagine they would probably also be growing a lot of potatoes, meaning they would have a lot of vodka. And then for this 45-degree build, we made a leather worker. So the interior is also not really built, but we've got this area where they'll be able to dye the leather, like as they're, you know, being the shopkeeper. Got a little section right here for the leather. But then out here, they are tanning some leather with this fire, and we just put some leather in some item frames to kind of simulate the leather tanning. So actually, historically in real life, tanning leather smells really, really bad. So this guy's probably not the most well-liked. And this building right here, I've got absolutely nothing. It's still just a stone front. If you got any ideas on what you might want to see in this one, do let me know. I do want to start maybe adding like a comment or question of the day type of thing towards the end of the episode. Sometimes I record episodes like before I post the previous one, because I kind of just record whenever I get the time. So I'm not always able to incorporate your ideas in the next episode because I just don't post the video yet, and so I don't see your suggestions. So I think doing it this way, where I have like a comment or question of the day, I can kind of, you know, answer some of your questions, or, you know, just shout out a comment. And then down here we've got nothing, but I imagine you could probably put like a potion shop. So there would be a desk right here, a table right here when you come through, and then back there would be some potion shelves. So right now I really only have that one shop on the corner that I need an interior advice for. So if you've got an idea, I can either do one building here and one building here, or this can just be connected. And I also just realized that this privacy fence wall here is actually not the most useful, given that you can kind of see into the baths from this tower in this building. But, you know, we're just going to use the power of imagination and say that they can't see them. But one last thing we have to do before leaving is shaders. Oh my. Okay, the shaders are a tiny bit bright on this area right there, but man, does it look sick. I mean, maybe if we change the shaders to complementary, It might look a little better. Ooh. Okay. I think I have the cave brightness setting on, so let's see without the cave brightness. There you go. Cave lighting to just to the default. Bam. Okay, now it's a little dark. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode. If you did enjoy the episode, do please leave a like and subscribe. And if you really like me, consider being a channel member. I'm about to be hitting my first year on YouTube, like content creation wise. And so I'll probably be having a world download available on that 1 year tour. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.